All right, great news for Shedeur Sanders. As it appears, Todd Monken is all in on 12, being the franchise quarterback for this team going forward. This is some really good news we have to get into. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video. That would be greatly appreciated. Now, over on Baskin and Phelps, they had Nate Ulrich on. He's an NFL Browns insider. And he spoke about what the Cleveland Browns plan to do in the draft. And Todd Monken is building the team around Shedeur Sanders. And that's one of the reasons why the Browns hired Todd Monken, is because he believes in Shedeur Sanders. So this is great news for Shedeur, as it's very clear he was dealt a raw deal with Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff prior to this. I mean, come on, man. They were putting the wrong plays in his wristband, having him practice on side fields with janitors, all types of stuff that went on. And now Todd Monken is going to build this offense up around Shedeur Sanders. And they know this offense needs a lot of work, which is why they brought Todd Monken in to get it together. Let's take a listen right now.
Well, I'm thinking offense. I mean, I get best player available, but usually you like to marry it with a need, and obviously the defense has been really good, and you need help at, obviously, offensive tackle and wide receiver more than anything. And I think that's a big reason why they hired Todd Monken. They weren't really shy about it. You know, that when it came down to it, it was like, hey, we really need to build this offense from the ground up here. So, he had the best offensive plan, obviously all the expertise and background as an offensive coach. So I think that's also going to be the theme of the offseason when it comes to acquiring talent. And I think that's what they're going to be looking at first and foremost in the draft.
Nate, what do you make of the youth movement that seems to be taking place on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, it's very interesting because my main criticism of Andrew Berry has been there's been a couple. One, I know he had a really good draft in 2025, but in my mind, he's 1 for 6 in drafts. Okay, now some of those drafts are harder to make hay in because you gave up the first-round picks in the Deshaun Watson trade. I get that, but still, your middle-round picks and your later-round picks, I understand the hit rate isn't as high on those rounds, but still – I just don't think his track record is strong enough in the draft. Second of all, he left the Browns in such a vulnerable position at offensive line where basically the whole offensive line, is hidden free agency other than like DeJuan Jones. So that is a huge problem. Obviously, the receiving corps also in bad shape. But the youth movement is going to happen, right? Because you have so much money tied up in the Deshaun Watson contract, and they're going to be able to have, money to operate with this offseason. They're going to cut some guys with, post-June 1 designations. They're going to restructure Watson. They're going to be able to free up money that way from a salary cap standpoint. But you're still so behind the 8 ball. So I think a lot of the youth movement is out of necessity because, you're in this situation where you have this offensive line that needs completely rebuilt, with maybe the exception of like DeJuan Jones, and also just the salary ramifications of that trade you made in March of 2022. So Andrew Berry called the Browns front office offensive line snobs a couple of years ago. Well, I want to see actions back up those words, because they've really put themselves in a situation this offseason where they must prioritize it. And I don't think they can cut any corners. They really got to go all in. I would not be shocked or have anything against if they would draft 2 offensive tackles in the first round. I don't think it'll happen. I think one of them has to be an offensive tackle, one of those 2 picks, 6 of 24. But just the situation they're in, show that you're O-line snobs and really go out and address this hole that you've dug.
Yeah.
Nate, I think they could do that, and I think I would say, you would say, Dan would say, and any Browns fan who's watched his team would say, okay, you did something to help this team. The question I have is, they haven't really drafted anybody on the offensive line. They haven't drafted anybody high, but even the guys they've drafted haven't really hit. I like DeJuan Jones, but DeJuan's been injured so much. Do you think they can identify a lineman to take in the first round?
That's a great question, and it goes back to my point about it. Andrew Berry has not been good enough at drafting. with the exception of the 2025 draft.
Yeah.
Now, let's hope he found something in his process there that he can carry forward. And obviously, the Haslams are banking on that by keeping him because they very well could have cleaned house. We've seen them fire head coach and GM. They opted to keep the GM in this case. So, obviously, Andrew Berry's going to get a chance to show that 2025 wasn't a fluke, even though right now on his resume it is the outlier. So let's see. Now, here's just a little idea I have. We get all kinds of consultants in the NFL. God, I mean, you name it.
Isn't that true?
It's a gig I want.
Yeah.
The clock consultant, the challenge consultant, whatever it is. Like, what about some O-line consultants? You're in this situation where you're going to have, if Joel Bitonio comes back, you're going to have him coming back, but that's an if. He's deciding right now. DeJuan Jones is under contract. Other than that, it's like a clean slate. Like, get Joe Thomas. George Warhop, I don't think is going to feel threatened by Joe Thomas because George Warhop coached Joe Thomas in Cleveland. Now he's back as offensive line coach, and those guys love each other. I mean, Joe Thomas has been ultra complimentary of George Warhop. Get Joe Thomas in, get George Warhop, lean on some other guys who maybe are out of the league. I'm just throwing out like a former O-line coach who's not in coaching right now for the Browns, but knows his stuff, has been around forever. Is like.
And he said all the right things. You're not going to walk in the door and go, I think fill in the blank's not very good. You're not going to do that. But I wonder what he thinks, and I wonder what he's telling Andrew Berry. What's your gut tell you about what he thinks of what he's inherited here and what might be coming? Because they both said external options.
Yeah, I think he thinks that he has nothing but question marks right now, right? And how could you think anything other than that? I mean, obviously, I think, and you saw the interaction the Browns put it on social media between Todd Monken and Shedeur Sanders, and we know that Baltimore's interest in the draft is well documented. And obviously with Todd being part of that process, I think he finds Shedeur Sanders is someone who's worth developing, and I would agree with that. Now, you can't say he's the answer. You can't say, we're putting all our eggs in this basket.
Oh, he's the answer. He's the answer.
But we're developing, yes, and I think that that's how he's looking at it. And with Deshaun Watson, it's just nothing but question marks because of the injury history, because of the time off. I mean, he came to the Browns with time off. Then he had more time off under contract with the Browns with suspension, and then shoulder, twice ruptured Achilles. So, I mean, who knows what you're going to get there, right? So, and when he did play, by the way, it wasn't that great, right? I mean, it was mediocre. At best, very, very poor. A lot of the times there were some highs. Obviously, one of those highs came in Baltimore when he led him to that comeback win. Todd Monken on the other side of the coaching battle there. So he saw that, has that in his mind. So I'm sure is fascinated by the prospect. Right? The grass, if it's ever going to be the Deshaun Watson of old, that seems so far removed that you definitely can't count on it. So I think, you're going to say outside options because you have nothing but question marks now.
Our man Shedeur Sanders is going to be QB1, Todd Monken's franchise quarterback, man. They already laid out the plan for the draft. Linemen, receivers, building up this team around Shedeur Sanders. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think. This Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and share the channel.